What's the fastest land animal on Earth? I'm betting you're thinking of the cheetah, and you are right. But did you know that this incredible speedster completely vanished from India for over 70 years? Like, gone, wiped out. This is the story of how the ghost of the grassland came back. Hey, this is Mansab, and you are watching Simply Wild. I always been that guy, the one who loves a good story. I started as a writer, then became a wildlife researcher, and out there in the field, I realized something. So many amazing stories from wildlife and history, they get locked up. So that's why this channel exists. And today, the story that we are going to deep dive into is the story of cheetah. For centuries, cheetahs were the prized hunting companions of Indian royalty. But this wasn't just any hunting. This was an art form called as coursing, and it was pure spectacle. The word cheetah itself has a fascinating origin. It comes from the Hindustani word, both Urdu and Hindi, cheetah, which traces back to its Sanskrit origin, which comes from the word chitreya, meaning adorned or painted. It is literally referring to their spotted coat. In the past, they were often called as hunting leopards as well, because unlike other big cats, they could be tamed and used for coursing. But here's the fun linguistic detail. The scientific name of the cheetah, Acinonyx, comes from the Greek word akinos, which means unmoved, and onyx, meaning nail. So, immobile nails. A reference to the cheetah's limited ability to retract its claws, unlike other cats. Unlike tigers or leopards, cheetahs were never feared as man-eaters. People saw them as oddly gentle and trainable despite being wild. I want you to picture something. The Mughal Emperor on horseback, and beside him, a cheetah, blindfolded and hooded, riding on a special cart. When a herd of a black buck was spotted, the cheetah would be unhooded and then just an explosion of speed. But here's what's the truly wild thing is, Emperor Akbar the Great didn't just have 1,000 cheetahs, yes, just casual 1,000 cheetahs like I mentioned, but over his entire reign, he supposedly housed up to 9,000 cheetahs. 9,000! Akbar had a favorite cheetahs with names and personalities and even coat ranks. His most famous cheetah was called Madan Kali. I'm not even kidding. And this cat was treated like royalty. It had a seat near Akbar's throne and was paraded at royal events like a visiting dignitary. The training process of the cheetah was surprisingly quick, like just 3 to 4 months. Trainers would hold the cat, leash them like hunting dogs, and release them for black buck and gazelle hunts. And it's like having a living, breathing sports car that you could direct at a prey. Jahangir, Akbar's son, once used cheetah to catch over 400 antelope in a single hunt around Delhi. 400. And here's the kicker. Jahangir actually managed to breed cheetahs in captivity, something that was almost impossible then, and it is still incredibly difficult today. But here's the fundamental problem with this whole system. Cheetahs, like I said, are notoriously difficult to breed in captivity. So where did all these thousands of cheetahs come from? They were all captured from the wild. For centuries, the royal courts were consistently removing adult cheetahs from the wild population, like it's managing the endless withdrawals from a bank account without even making a deposit. And for the long time, the wild population was large enough to handle it. But it was a system doomed to fail. And then came the British Raj, and everything changed. The British completely flipped the script on cheetahs, where the Mughals saw royal partners, British saw vermin. The colonial government actually offered bounties for killing cheetahs. Bounties. Can you imagine that shift? From being seated next to an emperor's throne to having a prize on your head. The sport of hunting them picked up with firearms. But it wasn't just British officers. Indian princes continued the tradition, but now it was about trophies, not partnership. And here's something even more desperate, by the way. By the early 1900s, cheetahs had become so rare in India that Indian princes were actually importing cheetahs from Africa just to keep their sport alive. They were literally replacing India's extinct cheetahs with African ones to maintain the tradition. Add to the fact that cheetahs' home, the open grasslands and scrub forests that they needed to run, was shrinking rapidly, being converted for agriculture, railways, and plantations. The cheetahs was caught in a perfect storm of constant depletion for hunting, direct persecution as vermin, and its habitat disappearing from under its paws. And the end came with a quiet and tragic swiftness. In 1947, it's widely reported that the last three known wild cheetahs in India were shot by Maharaja Ramanuj Pratap Singh Dev of Sarguja. There's a single photograph from this moment. Three beautiful cheetahs laid out the final punctuation mark on their long history in this land. It's a photograph that haunts anyone who sees it, the literal end of an era captured in black and white. By 1952, the Indian government officially declared the cheetahs extinct within its border. The speedster was gone, and the ghost of the grassland had vanished. But here's something that adds even more mystery to the story, that there were scattered rumors and unconfirmed sightings of cheetahs in central and southern India into the 1970s, but no confirmed wild births after 1950. It is possible a few individuals hung on longer than we think, but they were ghosts even then. For 70 years, the cheetahs was just a memory, a story in history books, a carving in a temple walls, a symbol without substance. But the dream of bringing it back never really died. That dream turned into, how to put it, one of the most controversial wildlife project India had ever attempted, Project Cheetah. The idea was this: the Asiatic cheetah, the original subspecies that lived in India, now survives only in Iran, with a fewer than 50 individuals remaining. They are critically endangered and unavailable for translocation. So, could we use their African cousins to fill that empty space in our ecosystem? It would be the world's first intercontinental translocation of a large carnivore. If you ignore the Indian princess hunting thing that they did. Anyway, after years of planning and international negotiation, it happened. In September 2022, eight cheetahs from Namibia were flown to India and released into specially built enclosures at Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh. More followed from South Africa, 20 cheetahs in total. Prime Minister Modi himself released the first cheetah, and it was a moment of incredible national pride, international headlines, and a genuine hope. The ghost, it seemed, was returning to reclaim its ancient territory. But this is where our story takes a complicated, heartbreaking turn. Because bringing an animal back from extinction isn't like rebooting a computer or restarting a stopped clock. The project became the subject of intense scientific and political debate almost immediately, and the statistics are sobering. Since the translocation began, nine adult cheetahs and several cubs have died. That's a mortality rate around 40% for adults and 30% for cubs. The cause of death have been varied and tragic. Territorial fights between cheetahs, kidney failures, infections, intense heat stress, and complication from the stress of adaptation. Each death became a national news story, and that added fuel to the growing controversy around the project. South Africa, one of the source countries, has actually paused further cheetah exports to India while conducting a review of the project. That's how serious the concerns have become. Critics argue that the project is ethically and scientifically problematic. They point to the high mortality rates, the use of soft release enclosures that may not properly prepare the cheetahs for the wild, genetic concerns about mixing different African populations, and the questions about whether the Indian landscape has changed too much in 70 years to support cheetahs. On the other side, wildlife officials and project defenders argue that this kind of mortality is expected and even adaptive during such risky and unprecedented experiment. They point to successful births, gradual adaptation, and the learning process that both humans and cheetahs are going through. They argue that conservation is never clean or easy and that giving up would mean accepting the permanent loss of an entire species from the Indian landscape. Cheetahs have low genetic diversity, making them susceptible to diseases. They are not great fighters. They are built for speed, not combat. They lose skills to stronger predators like leopards and hyenas. They overheat easily after chases. All these factors make cheetah introduction completely challenging. You're not just moving an animal, you are trying to rebuild an entire ecological relationship that was broken 70 years ago. The cheetah story is about more than just one species. It's about our relationship with wild itself. It's about the consequences of our choice and the complexity of trying to fix what we have broken. In the Mughal era, cheetahs were partners. Under the British, they become targets. In modern India, they have become symbols of loss, of hope, and of our ability to both destroy and restore. The project Cheetah is still unfolding. Every birth, every death, every adaptation is being watched, measured, and debated. The future of the cheetah in India is still being written day by day in the grasslands of Kuno. So, where does that leave us? Well, the story of Indian cheetah is the story of incredible highs and devastating lows. It's a story of a royal partnership, colonial destruction, and a modern ambition. It's a reminder that the conservation is never simple, and bringing back what we have lost is one of the hardest things we can attempt. The future of cheetah in India hangs in balance, but the fact that we refuse to accept permanent loss says something important about who we are as a species. And that brings us to the end of season 1 of Simply Wild. But there are more stories out there, wilder stories out there, stories that takes us beyond just Indian wildlife history into the realm of myth and legend. Season 2 of Simply Wild is coming, and we are going global. We are hunting from the real animals that inspired humanity's greatest monsters. From the wolf that scared the Norse gods to the fox spirits of Japan, from the griffin born from a fossil bones to the creature that exists only in our imagination. The wild is about to get mythical. Thank you for joining me on this first season of Simply Wild. This is your host, Mansab, signing off. Until season 2, keep that curiosity blazing and always keep it simply wild. And I'll see you in the next one.